yesterday at the Q&A after the movie, you talked, well, I guess in the intro, you talked about how personal this film is. And I'm curious, how does the fact that it's so personal inform the casting process and what you're looking for in these actors?
Well, I think the danger of working on something that is so personal, that is so inspired by my own life, is to try to recreate the actuality and try to get the actors to do exactly what that is. And I think to me, that seemed like a very dangerous path towards, it just didn't seem like the right thing to do. So I think it was very much about finding people who understand the souls of the character, who I know can embody it and are great actors. And then it was really a matter of finding the characters themselves. It really wasn't ever about what is accurate to real life or something. It would always be about what is the story that we're trying to tell and who are the characters that are going to be the best to tell it. So it really was a collaboration with these three, finding these characters.
Well, I want to hear more about that collaboration, but first I'm just curious about the casting process in general. I mean, how did you land on these three actors? Because it's such a, obviously it's not just a movie where it's not a movie where you can have each person be great. They have to be great together. The chemistry is so important.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how you assembled this cast.
Well, I think the first piece of the puzzle had to be Greta, finding Nora. And it sort of started to get built out from that. It was more like once I've met Greta, and then once I knew that she was Nora, then it was really a conversation about, okay, so who are the right people to have the chemistry and things like that. So it is, it's an addition process, but it's also more about meeting them and then also understanding them and thinking about what kind of story that we're trying to tell, both in casting, but in the conversations that we're having in advance of making the film and then during.
So for each of the actors, what do you remember about your initial conversations with Celine about these characters?
Interestingly, I was initially turned down from playing this role. And it was a totally different iteration, and it was one of those things that just happens in a traditional casting process. And it was just, I had let go of the idea of playing this character, and it popped back up again almost a year exactly after that. And out of the blue, and I got one of those calls, one of those freak of life kind of calls of, hey, can you get on the phone with Celine Song today? Do you remember that?
Wow.
And I had nearly forgotten what the project was because I so kind of tried to excise it from my wants. It was so painful to let this script go. But I think that conversation, it was just such a lightning in a bottle kind of a moment. We both are Korean American, yes, but we both have our roots in theater. We both had, I would say, a pretty ambitious vision of what we were trying to set out to do with this movie. And I just was completely floored to find this kindred spirit in this conversation of how to approach a love story that was also going to be so expansive and tackle so many major themes that are hard to convey cinematically.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the first conversations we had was about the amount of Korean that you were speaking naturally, because I think that it's really important for character of Nora to represent sort of it really is about how much of the language that you speak. And Greta, I know that when we were talking about it, I think that was a really important conversation for Nora of how good her Korean should be and all those things. And what I think what was a big revelation for us was that I had to tell Greta that actually the amount of Korean that she speaks is perfect for the character.
Which is wild beyond my imagination.
it's not even, but the thing, it's not even sufficient. It's that's the ideal level of language that it should be, because she is somebody who was taken from that language when she was younger.
Yeah, so. And that is maybe even a whole separate conversation, but I really, the language, I never intended to do a film in Korean. That was not something I ever thought I would do. I think by then it was losing the job previously that allowed for me to just be completely honest about what I was hoping to bring to it, and honest about who I am and my story as an immigrant and how much Korean I have. I'm so glad for it because we were able to expose what this is like, of showing your language, your native language, is so vulnerable. Like my Korean, it's so private to me, and I couldn't believe that that was what we were going to share with this film.
Teo, talk a little bit about what your initial conversations with Celine were like.
Well, in contrast to Greta's situation, I think I was one of the last to come on board to this project, and I think also one of the last of all the people that she was looking at. I put myself on tape. I read the script. I couldn't believe how beautiful the script was, especially because of like the emotional content and me always longing for something where I can express my melancholy in a character. And yeah, I was hoping that I could find sort of a master and be that instrument for that master. And a week later, she wanted to have a callback, and little did I know that that callback was almost like a 3-hour rehearsal session. And my manager was like calling me and it's like, what's going on, you know, like after an hour, and I was like ignoring the phone. And yeah, and after we were done, yeah, Kyle, my manager, he was telling me, yeah, that's not normal, 3 hours, man. It must be a good sign. And then, yeah, a week later, she called me and was like, yeah, you got it, man.
John, I really felt for your character in this movie. Like, I felt like he was such a decent guy, and I just felt so, so bad for you at times. But like really respected the way your character was handling everything. I'm curious, how did you see this guy, and what was your approach coming in?
It's very close to me, this story, personally. I am married to a Korean-American woman. Her parents were they immigrated here, so there's a lot of similarities. So for me, once I saw the script, initially I fell in love and identified, and much like Greta, I went through a similar thing, behind the scenes. Like Greta said, things happen and things change. I think initially some people were thinking younger than us.
What do you mean? What people?
And that changed. For our good fortune, it changed,
Yeah.
and it became us. And I think there's something really lovely. I've been saying this, that it is an adult love story. And I know, as somebody who's married and dealing with that feeling of being an outsider to my partner's experiences in life, and also being a modern man who is trying to be better and destroy kind of the toxic nature of American white males. I thought this was a great opportunity for me to also just learn about my own experiences and also share it with other people. And I think Celine wrote just such an incredible script that showcases masculinity in a honest and intelligent and human but gentle way. I mean, they both are dealing with their jealousies. They're both dealing with these complex and deep emotions, but they're also three-dimensional human beings who are able to cope with it. So not often do you get to see that, and I was excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really interesting about the movie is that the situations, if you described it, it could be the stuff of melodrama. I mean, very much so, but it's not really played like melodrama. It's very restrained and subtle. And I'm curious how you kind of calibrate that tone. I mean, on the one hand, you don't want it to be so restrained that it doesn't look like anything's happening, but you don't want to, again, let it veer off. Clearly you didn't want to let it veer off into being something that felt too forced. So talk a little bit about how you struck that tone.
Well, I think that I think it requires a lot of sensitivity to authenticity, or some kind of realism of like human emotions and the way that it can feel to myself, but also to people I know, everybody around us, sort of. So I think it is just, I think exactly that balance is the thing that I'm thinking about the whole time. So anything, if it feels not real to me or not authentic to me or false to me, I'm the only person who can be so honest about that, so that I know how to steer clear from that, But I also think that it is about extraordinary emotions in ordinary circumstances. So I think that the depth of emotion has to be earned and built throughout the film, and I think it's like, so it was constructed that way, sort of.
Now, as a first-time feature director, what were the big challenges for you, and how did you, it's sort of a ridiculously general question, but how did you find this experience? Was it something that was harder than you thought it would be, easier than you thought it would be, more fun than you thought it would be?
I want to know the answer to this question.
Well, I think that there's a moment where I think I realized how at home I felt in the job, or it was really very much a discovery for me. And you just feel yourself be pushed to certain limits, and then you just learn how much further your limits are. So it really was about self-discovery process to begin with. It is both much more difficult and in some ways much easier. Much easier if because I know what the story that needs to be told is. Much more difficult because of your own uncertainties or your own like crisis of faith about the story that we're telling. So it's a sort of like it's both of those things. But at the end of the day, the thing that I know guided me throughout this whole thing was me really understanding the story that we're trying to tell, and that is the sort of the thing that guided me through every complicated part of it. But it's just the most fun, a person can have for me. So it was just the best thing, just because I just learned this about myself, that this is where I belong.
It was wild, though,
the three of us,
because
we
the
were
three
all
of
so
us,
amazed
we were the
for
only
a
ones.
first-time filmmaker, which was amazing.
Yeah, we were the only ones who'd been on a set before. Celine had never been on a set,
Yeah.
and yet
She was a
to
champion.
witness someone who was fully in their gift was terrifyingly like incredible, and we were so awestruck by she's just cool as a cool cat.
Yeah.
Knew exactly what she wanted, and it was, it was really a thing of beauty for us.
Yeah.
We'd never experienced anything like that before.
I think we can all say I've worked with directors who've been doing it for years, who don't have as clear of a vision as Celine did as a first-time filmmaker. And I'm gonna keep saying this, but like this film is introducing the world to a great auteur who is going to have a long and wonderful career. So I hope people, not often does that happen. Not often you get to see that. So I hope people see it.
Yeah.
Celine, I was always wondering, do you think your work previously as a writer on Broadway helped you dealing with us?
I was not on Broadway.
Yeah.
She's
I'm so sorry.
Musicals.
It's okay. Just for the
I was
record.
like, that was my preconceived notion, because for me you
What
were
in
like
New York?
out there.
Well,
You're like, okay,
What
but
was your
as a
question?
writer
Lane
and working with actors, did it help like dealing with us? Because I felt like you were so experienced. Yeah.
Well, I think without question, I think that like storytelling through character, and actors, that's sort of that's something that I'm not new at, and also writing is not something that I'm new at. So I feel like those are the things that, of course, without question, equips me so that when I'm talking about like how are we going to tell this story, that is sort of a direct way that I have a ton of experience when it comes to that.